very brightly colored and it's very loud, and it's fun for a while.
We want to be free to do what we want to do.
Were Muhammad Ali and Sonny Barker, the president of Hell's Angels.
This is 1095.
Hey, Don, welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
Thanks, mate. Very good.
How's Chiang Mai today?
Sunny and hot.
The usual. So you've been locked in there for. I know your apartment there. We spent plenty of time brainstorming script ideas inside that apartment, but it's probably not been the worst place to be actually during this kind of weird old
for
year
lockdown. It's been okay. Yeah, it's comfortable for lockdown.
Yeah, right. It's not. I was just chatting to a friend in the UK earlier, and I really feel for these guys overseas. I think in Thailand we've been really fortunate. And as a writer, I wondered, how have you found it refreshing to be locked down in a sense because you like being kind of isolated while you're writing, or have you felt your freedom's been taken away at all this year?
No, actually, I felt very comfortable with it. In a way, it helps because it as a disincentive to run out and do a lot of things I don't have to do. So staying inside has actually been very peaceful and helpful.
I thought you may say that. Hey, look, as way of introduction, maybe good to. Do you want to give a bit of background on yourself and who you are, what you do, just for our for the listeners? It would kind of help.
Sure.
Just give a bit of background on yourself.
I'm born and bred in New York City. I've traveled around the world many times. I originally started as an academic, directing language programs, both in the US and Europe and Brazil and recently in Thailand. I left all of that a while ago and gotten back to my first love, which is writing. So I was a short story writer in New York for quite a time, fairly well known. And more recently, I've gotten script writing. You know that my first feature film was The Last Executioner, and it did very well. It played worldwide. It won the equivalent of the Thai Oscars, including, for me, a screenwriter. And that was a really big honor because it made me the first non-Thai to win one of these awards since the King started the award over 60 years ago. So that's been nice. And then more recently, I co-wrote the script for The Cave about the rescue of the boys in northern Thailand last year. And as you know, I wrote a script with you called Dark Karma, which we're still hoping will get made. And another script called Ghost People, which is about the Hmong people in northern Laos and their persecution. So that's been it. And right now I'm writing a pitch. I was requested by Netflix to write a pitch, a drama pitch for them. And that's been quite interesting because they had three criteria. One is they wanted drama and not comedy. Two, they wanted something applicable to Southeast or South Asia. And the big one was they wanted something that was binge watchable. So I've watched a whole bunch of dramas to try to find out what that means exactly. And it's a very different kind of writing. And I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, that Netflix obviously want binge watchable. They want to get people on there and make sure they stay on there. And
right.
I mean, I know the binge watchable stuff because we get hooked on them now and then. But
Me too.
Yeah. There's a few things I want to chat about, but it would be good to start chatting about The Cave, actually. I mean, The Cave is I would say, the most recent project in terms of being out there. And interesting, I saw Tom actually posted yesterday online, Tom Waller, who's the director, he posted online about they're now making another version, right, which is I forget the director, but a big budget Hollywood version, which actually they're shooting in Australia. But so it's good that you guys got out there first. And I saw that film in Bangkok maybe a year ago, if I'm right, maybe a bit longer, and I know it internationally, it got international distribution. The story is a kind of world famous story, the football team that got stuck in the cave. What was the process of writing that like? Did you visit the caves? Did you kind of get inside the minds of the people, the characters from that story? To maybe talk us through some of the experiences of writing that script.
Sure. We Tom, some of the crew, and Tom's wife, Katie, we went up there several times. The first time was quite an eye-opener because we went to the cave. Tom got special permission to go to the mouth of the cave, which has since been closed to visitors. And it was quite an eye-opener for me because I had watched lots of newscasts and seen pictures in newspapers and whatever. And somehow in my mind, I had it that the entrance was ground level and they could walk into it. But in fact, it was quite a shock. They had to go down a kind of slippery slope of about, I don't know, 3 meters or so, and crawl into an entrance that was maybe only 1.5 meters high. So they really had to work at this. And then while we were in that area, we spoke to a lot of the locals. Very interesting people, very interesting stories. And then, fast forward, Tom and Katie and I spent 2 days in my living room, and you know that, on the floor with a whiteboard, sketching out the story. And then we kind of wrote it together in segments and then pasted them all together. So it was a very different kind of experience for me. I'd never done anything like that. No, that was it, basically.
Yeah, I get a sense. I mean, I know you quite well in terms of your writing. You prefer to write alone, right? Although I think you prefer to work on your own, which a lot of writers do. But it's kind of unavoidable in movie making that you've got to collaborate sometimes, particularly, on these types of projects. Like, how do you find that process? Can you deal with the collaboration as a writer? Does it drive you nuts? Or because I know, I said, I know you prefer to write alone, but talk us through some of that stuff.
Well, when we wrote together, it drove me nuts. No, just joking. Not at all. Actually, that was a very positive experience. This experience was, for the cave, it was actually very different because we were writing collaboratively, but separately. As I mentioned, we plotted out the whole thing with markers on a whiteboard, and then we actually divvied up the scenes. And we went to write them on our own, and Tom, as director, pasted them together into a film. So it was collaborative writing, but it was also individual writing. It was a little weird because I was writing scenes kind of in a vacuum. I knew what the scene was, but usually when you write, you know the story, even if you're not, even if you know how to plot it out, you know what's happening. You're in that world. But this was a very different. This was just taking a scene and writing it, and then hoping that it fit in. So that was it.
Yeah, that's a really different way of collaborating. And it's interesting, actually. I was speaking to James Newman recently, also known as JD Strange, who and he and I have worked on stuff. And he was talking about how, when you collaborate on writing screenplays, often if there's two of you, it's like there's this third person, which is the kind of creation coming together of the two people. I know that working with you on Dark Karma a couple of years ago, whenever it was, I definitely felt that but you need that structured process. You can't kind of work in a vacuum. Like, when you go into writing a screenplay, do you work to a process? Do you have a format? Do you change depending on the project? And if there is a format, what is that format and process that you work to?
Right. One of the reasons I like to write alone is that I'm not a very good plotter to plot out a film. As you know, I prefer writing character-centered stories, like The Last Executioner. So when I write and writing alone, I basically enter that world in my head. I enter the world of the film. So what happens sort of organically. And then I will plot certain sections, but I rarely have something plotted from the beginning to the end. And the end sometimes comes as a surprise to me because it's just grown out of what the world of that film or short story has been. This is another way of saying that I'm not a very disciplined writer. I kind of, write by inspiration and just, like I said, kind of organically where I feel the story is going. But the other sorry.
I was going to say, do you write without a treatment ever, or do you always write a treatment first? I mean, because I know if you read the books and if you look at, when I started learning to screenwrite, I just tried to jump into it, which was a stupid thing to do, because actually, if you got no treatment, you just end up in this kind of world of confusion. Really, you get into a story and then you're lost in the characters.
Right. I mean, if I work from a treatment, it's usually not by choice. Like when I worked on Last Executioner, obviously for Tom's purposes, we needed to have a treatment, so I wrote that. When I wrote the Hmong movie, also I was sort of had to write a treatment, and the cave, as I said, it all came from the three of us working together. So, like plotting, from beginning to end, I don't really feel I need a treatment. I'll make notes, really copious notes, and like in the old style of doing a screenplay, I don't have index cards on the wall, but I have scenes written out. And since most of the stuff I've written relies on a lot of knowledge of the subject or the story, and this is part of my academic background, I do extensive research. I mean, even stuff I don't have to know, because my process of writing, even as a short story writer, is that, let's say I have a character, I have to know when that character goes into let's say, a car showroom, that character will pick the black car instead of the green car. Even if buying a car doesn't even enter into the story, I have to know what that is in order to understand the character. So.
Where is it interesting? Well, I mean, obviously when you're researching, that gives you inspiration into characters, but where does your inspiration come from typically when you're writing? Do you, I mean, and are you a people watcher? Are you always picking up kind of tips and, ideas and just from observing the world? Where does your inspiration come from as a screenwriter when you get into characters?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, if I'm writing a story of my own, if it's not sort of based in a reality, this has always been my way as a short story writer, as a screenwriter. I'm very drawn to quirky actions of a character, or something a little bit off base. Not sci-fi, not crazy, but something a little bit off base. And that attracts me. And then usually in my mind, I'll build a story around that. Or in certain instances, like in The Last Executioner, the character of the spirit, which played by David Hassanvad, that had nothing to do with Chavarette recollections or anything. That was just my own device because I felt it would help the story. So, it's sort of like needs and something that I see, but sometimes it can be something really, really minor that I see in a character.
I like that character I watched The Last Executioner, I mean, when we first met, so it's a while ago now, it's probably 5 years ago, but I like David's character. But as you just mentioned, then something struck me, because I know that you had a character, that you had an idea for a character in the cave as well. There's a bit of a theme with you picking out these kind of spiritually focused characters, actually, isn't there, within these stories? Where does that come from? Is that a Thai thing, or I mean, am I picking up on something there? It's interesting, actually. I just realized with David's character, and I know the one you were talking about in the cave, that I don't think it really got featured that much, but
right. I'm not it's not Thai necessarily. That's just my way of looking at the world. For the cave, the character who most interested me and who was the character of the woman rice farmer. And we met and talked with her. Just a lovely, interesting woman, very focused. And there was something about her, which I can't really define, that was just so attractive as a person, as a human being, as a soul, that she really, really interested me. And then the other character who really, really interested me, who got sort of short shrift, was the monk, who they come down to make merit to try to get the boys out. But there was a scene that was on YouTube and newspapers where this monk, about 50 years old, he comes down. There's a big press all this press surrounding him, and they ask him whether he believes that he was the reincarnation of in the original myth, there's a stable boy who falls in love with a princess and they marry. And the locals believe that there are reincarnations of this stable boy. And they ask him, do you believe that you're the reincarnation of the stable boy? And his answer was, possible, 50-50. And it's things like that. They're just a little bit off base that really attract me.
What, I mean, you might be answering it in that really, but what attracted you to screenwriting? Is it just, wanting to kind of dive into different personas and have empathy for the individuals and understand life from their perspective? What is it, that type of thing? Is it something different?
It's a combination of a lot of things. I mean, when I was in high school and college and grad school, in New York, there were, in Manhattan alone, there were 3 theaters that every day of the year showed a double feature of foreign films. And every day of the year, it was a different combination of films. So on one night, you might have a Kurosawa and Fellini, another might be a Truffaut and whatever, somebody, Rossellini or something like that. And I just loved films. I mean, I was in the films all the time. And then sort of moving forward from that, and the reason I became a short story writer and not a novelist is because I just naturally see the world episodically. I could never be a novelist because I don't see the world itself as like a finite, closed story. So going into films was just a sort of natural progression for me. As was when I became a short story writer. I grew up. I was writing poems, which I can't read now, but and then I noticed that my poems were getting more and more narrative. Characters were becoming more and more important to the poems, and lines of dialogue were seeking in. And then I said, I'm writing short stories. And sort of the same thing happened from short stories to film. And so, I mean, that kind of stuff just was natural for me.
It must be awesome as well when you write this stuff. I mean, when you're writing a script and then getting to see it come alive with people and who I know are your friends as well. You've been lucky that your friends, I know, with a lot of these people that we both know that have acted and played in your films, David, Vithaya, probably some others, but it must be awesome to go through that process of, diving inside the head of a character, writing the script, the dialogue, and then seeing people bring that to life, often different to what you wrote, because you can't be too attached to things, right? The process is so fluid with writing a script and getting it to screen, but it's still, I imagine, is very satisfactory being able to see those guys bring those characters to life.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, Last Execution was the first full-length film, feature film that I had written, and it did its international premiere before its Thai premiere at the Shanghai International Film Festival by invitation. And I had to tell you, seeing that film on the big screen was just an amazing experience. I mean, there's almost no experience for me that's been comparable to that. It's just wonderful. But as you said, it's not what I wanted exactly, but I sort of long ago made peace with myself on that it's not going to happen exactly the way that's the process of making films, the director's vision, the editor's vision. And I keep going back to when I first started teaching university, and I had an older colleague who he told me, don't ever invest your ego in your teaching. And I try to maintain the same notion for my writing, particularly for films, because it's not going to be exactly as I wanted. But when there are lines of dialogue, when there are actions that are exactly what I wanted, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's such. I mean, that's mad. That's the best advice, because it is. There's so many people involved in making a movie, and you write a script, and if it gets made, your name's to it and the title's there. But yeah, the amount of people along that path of producers, directors, actors, edit. I mean, there's a vast distance between the script and the end product. I mean, it's an inevitable part of making a movie, right? That's definitely good advice, I'm sure. I mean, if Dark Karma ever gets made, there's other guys working on it now, taking it, giving it their own. There's just no point being attached to it, right?
Yeah.
I was going to ask about. We've never spoken about this actually, and it may just be a dead end question, but do you have an interest in theatre? Have you ever written theatre scripts? Is it something, because that actually does, theatre scripts do tend to be much more to the point. I've got a friend who's a playwright in Singapore. She's written 2 or 3 plays that have done well now. But as far as I can see, the process of that, the writer is a lot closer to the end product. There tends to be a lot less variation. I mean, you're writing a script, the actors do a reading, you're on stage live. So it's a different process. Have you done any theatre writing? Is it something that's attractive?
Actually, it's interesting. There's a guy here in Chiang Mai, Stephen Turner, who does a community theater, but they do good stuff. And Steve and I were talking one day, and he said, "Why don't you do a play of Last Executioner?" And immediately I went home. I had the whole thing blocked out. I knew I wanted a very minimal set, and it was really exciting. But I just had too many other things, because that would be a steep learning curve for me. And I just felt I didn't have the time or the energy to do it, because there's other things that I know I can do. But maybe someday, because it's exciting, but it's a whole different process. First of all, it's all dialogue. I mean, you have to, you don't really have any time for writing a narrative and something like that. But maybe someday, I don't know.
Yeah, I might be wrong. I just get a hunch that you might enjoy it based on what you just said. I know, speaking to Sweat Lee, who's a friend in Singapore. Yeah, I mean, I've watched her writing and her plays come alive from the paper to the stage, and it's really interesting watching the process. But there's a lot less of a gap between what goes on the paper and what ends up going on the stage, which is quite, I think, really satisfying from a writing point of view. So yeah, interesting. Well, I don't know how much you can share about the work the stuff you're working on now. Can you talk about that? I know you're working on some Netflix stuff. Is it shareable or?
Yeah, a little bit. Tom and I decided to pitch, because we both know people there, and I was asked to do it. We're writing for Netflix Asia, which gets distributed, but it's run by several British women in the office in Singapore. And so we're actually writing 2 pitches that are parallel. And the one I'm doing is on child abductions, which is a huge issue worldwide, which doesn't get a whole lot of play. This is different from child kidnapping or trafficking or anything like that. This is generally one parent taking the child for various reasons. Most often it's the mother, actually. And it often has to do with money or revenge for an affair or something like that. But so what happened was, I have a colleague in New York who married a Japanese woman, and after 5 years of a wonderful marriage and a son, she took the child to Japan. And my friend Brian has been trying for 10 years, the kid's 15 now, to even try to get to see him. So, and Brian has been in front of congressional committees and that kind of thing. So I know his story. Then I saw another story about an abduction in Thailand several years ago, and it just drew me into the story. So that's the theme, but I'm still sort of at the initial stages of it.
Actually, really interesting. I know, but I actually had a friend I obviously won't mention his name, but that this happened to, and I was somewhat involved in the process of reuniting them just when I was, doing work for a law firm. So yeah, it clearly is a situation that comes up quite often. So that sounds like kind of heart-wrenching material, I imagine. But that's going to be written as a drama or a documentary? So it'll be actual real stories, but based on real
stories. It may be based on a
truth.
real story. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to do a documentary on it. So if you're basing it on a real story, obviously there are legal implications to that, and just gotta be careful with that. So I mean, I'll draft it, and then again, like Last Execution or other stories, it's not going to necessarily be following the whole story. There'll be embellishments or changes or characters appearing, but that's the basic theme. And
I mean, I think Netflix is the place to be chatting right now, right? With the year we've had, what's your view on the impact to the industry because of everything that's happened this year? Are you, from someone on the inside, are you seeing any optimism in terms of, oh great, there'll be more money going into kind of projects for streaming, or what's your kind of view on 2020 and how it's impacted the industry and what lies ahead?
Right. I mean, even before all the chaos with COVID and everything, my feeling was that films and cinemas, they just have a couple of more years and then they're dead. I mean, I really feel that the future is really in streaming and things like Netflix or Amazon or Hulu for a number of reasons. First of all, unless people are binge watching, it doesn't require as much of an attention span. And I think, as we know, people don't have really good attention spans these days. Plus, I think there's an economics involved in it. I mean, to make a film or to go to the theater for a couple, I mean, I know that like in New York or in the States, if a couple goes to a film with everything involved, the popcorn, the transportation, it's $60 or $70. And, you can download or buy a film or, a series and just stay at home in the comfort of your home with a widescreen TV. It's not the same experience as seeing something on the big screen. But I think for younger people, they don't have that experience anyway. It's mainly for older people that, that's our benchmark. And I've gone away from that. I mean, I like being at home, and there are some series that are just phenomenal. The writing, the acting, like recent ones on Netflix, Unorthodox, or the one Sacha Baron Cohen wrote and directed, Spy. There's one called I forget what it's called, but it's a drama, a crime drama, which is also just phenomenal. And I think there's some good stuff coming out of that. I mean, I prefer to watch that stuff now.
Yeah, we're the same. I mean, I love the cinema experience. I mean, frankly, I've not been now for 12 months, but yeah, the for me, Netflix is all about, series. And I mean, I don't know if you watched the Ozarks. I absolutely loved the Ozarks, which was a three series. It was 3 series of, I think, 10 episodes each or something. But yeah, there's some awesome stuff out there. But occasionally you want that cinema experience. But like you say, I mean, the cost of massive TVs now is probably 4 trips to a cinema. That's the crazy thing.
Yeah. I mean, also, well, this is just economics too. I mean, when I was going to, first-class cinemas here in Chiang Mai and in Bangkok and everything, I mean, I would go to a first-run Hollywood film on a Saturday night, and there were 12 people in the audience. I didn't even have to stay open. So, I just think it's moving away from that. And I like the episode, I like things episodic. So for me, these series, I don't do very well with the 2, 3, 4 season series thing because I just don't have the time or the attention span for that. So, and I'm also obsessive. So I can't say, Oh, okay. Starting season 2 or starting season 3. If I'm going to go into a series, I've got to watch it from the first, episode just to feel comfortable with it, and that takes a lot of time.
It does indeed.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I wanted to, just as we close out, I know you're starting on some new stuff in terms of services you're providing. Do you want to share a bit on what that is and how people can find out about you? Just some of the consulting work you're doing?
Sure. I mean, I've worked a lot as an editor or as a teacher of writing. And so now I'm sort of putting that into a more commercial thing. So I'm going to be launching sort of mid-December, both writing workshops and individual editing services for both script writing and for other prose writing, short stories, novels, whatever. And in the age of Zoom, that's become much more viable because, I mean, I'm going to offer it both in person, but also on Zoom, which, I mean, I've done a workshop, for example. I had people on 5 continents, in the same session, and that's just amazing. And, it really it creates a great dynamic. So right now, the only contact I have is my email, but there will be other contacts. I mean, I'm building web pages. There'll be, we know from our experience, there'll be a Facebook page going up probably next week. And, I'll get the word out.
Awesome. Well, by the time this goes out and gets published, maybe it'll be timely and I can include the links. So
Great.
Look, appreciate you taking the time to join, and hope everything is well down there.
Great.
We're not that far away. I do, like you, I mean, I'm doing Zoom calls with people all over the world, but we're three hours drive away, so we shall probably catch up for a coffee or whatever else sometime soon.
Terrific, and thank you. This has been fun as always.
What we want to
Two
do.
were Muhammad Ali and Sonny Barker, the president of Hell's Angels.
This is 1095.